April 8, 1943, 27,000 feet over Caen, France. The air was razor thin, the sky impossibly clear, the kind of cold blue silence that only exists above the clouds. Oberleutnant Ralph Hermaken adjusted his oxygen mask inside the cramped cockpit of his Focke-Wulf 190A5. Through the canopy, he spotted something strange, a formation of fighters climbing slowly from far below. He blinked. They looked wrong. Too big, too fat, too slow. "The Americans have sent us flying milk bottles," he radioed to his wingman, laughter audible even through the static. Below him, 16 Republic P-47 Thunderbolts of the U.S. 4th Fighter Group were grinding upward toward their first major combat over occupied Europe. Their engines, massive Pratt and Whitney R, two 800 double Wasps, roared with mechanical fury, straining to lift nearly 7 tons of steel into the stratosphere. To the Germans circling above, it was a joke. Heavy, lumbering machines that looked more like bombers than fighters. But what Hermaken didn't know, what no one on the German side could possibly imagine, was that these awkward newcomers would soon rewrite the laws of aerial warfare and bring the Luftwaffe to its knees. The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt began 3 years earlier, in the summer of 1940, the darkest moment of the war. France had fallen. Britain stood alone. The Luftwaffe ruled the skies. In America, panic spread through the Army Air Corps. Its frontline fighter, the P-40 Warhawk, was already outdated. The U.S. needed something radical, a high-altitude interceptor capable of meeting the German menace head-on. The task fell to Alexander Kartveli, a Georgian-born immigrant engineer at Republic Aviation. He was told to design a lightweight fighter capable of 400 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. But Kartveli looked at the challenge differently. He realized no light fighter could match the Germans. If America wanted to win, it needed a new philosophy: power over grace, durability over agility. "It will be a dinosaur," Kartveli told his team, "but a dinosaur with good proportions." And so, the XP-47B prototype took shape. An immense, barrel-bodied machine wrapped around the most powerful radial engine in the world. A massive turbo-supercharger, fed by hot exhaust gases, wound through the fuselage like a maze of steel intestines. It gave the aircraft sea-level performance even at 30,000 feet, something no German engine could match. When the prototype flew on May 6, 1941, the test pilot was astonished. It was heavy, it was loud, it was enormous, but it was also fast, over 420 miles per hour, faster than any U.S. fighter yet built. It was not a dancer, it was a brawler, and America was about to need one. By late 1942, the first Thunderbolts reached training fields in Connecticut and New York. They were monsters on the ground, difficult to taxi, dangerous to land, and unforgiving to the inexperienced. The 56th Fighter Group under Hubert Hub Zemke learned that the hard way. 18 pilots were lost before they ever saw an enemy. The plane's enormous propeller could torque roll it off the runway. Its landings had to be perfect. And if you dove too fast, the controls froze solid, the first American pilots to discover the deadly phenomenon of compressibility. Zemke hated it. He called it a flying iron bathtub. But then he began to notice something remarkable. Once in the air, at high altitude, nothing, not a single German fighter, could outrun or outdive it. The men started to believe. So came that morning over France, April 8, 1943. The Luftwaffe pounced. Focke-Wulfs streaked down from the sun. The P-47s lumbered upward, still green, still unsure. The Germans laughed, but they didn't laugh for long. Though several Thunderbolts were shot down, Others came home riddled with holes, aircraft that, by all logic, should have fallen apart in mid-air. One P-47 returned with 21 cannon hits and more than 100 bullet strikes. The engine kept running. The pilot climbed out and lit a cigarette. German intelligence dismissed it as propaganda, but within weeks they would see proof with their own eyes. June 26, 1943, Lisieux, France. Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of the 61st Fighter Squadron was flying escort for bombers when his formation was jumped by 16 Focke-Wulfs from Jagdgeschwader Sachsen-Zwanzig, led by Wilhelm Ferdinand Galand, brother of the famous Adolf Galand. Johnson's P-47 took a storm of cannon shells. His canopy shattered, his instrument panel exploded, his leg was bleeding, and his engine caught fire. He tried to bail out, but the canopy was welded shut by shrapnel, so he did the unthinkable. He flew the wreck home. Then, out of nowhere, a lone German fighter appeared behind him and opened fire, again and again and again. Cannon shells walked up the fuselage. Machine gun rounds tore into the wings. The German pilot emptied his entire loadout, and the Thunderbolt still didn't fall. Finally, the enemy pilot pulled alongside, stared in disbelief, and saluted. Then he turned away. Johnson crash-landed in England. His crew counted over 200 bullet holes. From that day forward, no one doubted the Thunderbolt's toughness again. After months of hard lessons, the Americans began changing tactics. They stopped trying to outturn or outclimb the Luftwaffe. Instead, they exploited what the P-47 did best: dive, hit, and climb away. Zemke's new doctrine was simple. Don't turn with them. Don't climb with them. Use your weight. Use your speed. Use your guns. And those guns, 8 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, were unmatched. Each P-47 carried 3,400 rounds, capable of firing 6,000 bullets per minute. At convergence, those streams of fire met in a 6-foot circle of destruction, enough lead to literally cut a fighter in half. When Luftwaffe pilots met Thunderbolts head-on, they didn't just lose, they disintegrated. August 17, 1943, the raids on Schweinfurt and Regensburg. Hundreds of B-17 bombers crossed into Germany, escorted by P-47s as far as their limited fuel allowed. Major David Schilling led his flight of Thunderbolts against a formation of twin-engine Messerschmitt Bf-110s. They rolled inverted, dove from 28,000 feet, and unleashed hell. A surviving German gunner later described it. The Americans came down like hammers from heaven. We fired. They didn't even flinch. Then they fired, and the plane in front of us exploded. Wings, tail, everything gone, nothing left but smoke. 18 German aircraft were destroyed in under a minute. The Luftwaffe had just learned what American firepower really meant. By late 1943, Republic engineers solved the Thunderbolt's greatest weakness: its range. With 108-gallon drop tanks, it could now escort bombers deep into Germany. A new model, the P-47D, arrived with a clear bubble canopy, giving pilots full visibility in combat. At the same time, engineers reinforced its wings to carry rockets and bombs. Suddenly, the Thunderbolt was no longer just a fighter. It was a fighter-bomber, capable of wiping out tanks, trains, bridges, anything that moved. The Germans started calling it Der große Dicke, the big fat one. But now the name carried fear, not laughter. When the Allies invaded Normandy on June 6, 1944, over 2,000 Thunderbolts darkened the skies. They strafed German armor columns, shattered communication lines, and hunted trains across France. Every road within 50 miles of the beaches was a death trap. "We were angels of death," said Johnson. The Luftwaffe no longer came to fight, they came to die. The P-47's role expanded again. In the months that followed, it became the backbone of Operation Cobra, Market Garden, and the Battle of the Bulge. Thunderbolts flew over the Ardennes in snow and fog, dropping bombs through blinding whiteouts, tearing apart the German offensive that threatened to split the Allied line. One pilot recalled seeing entire columns of tanks explode under 8 rockets and 2 500-pound bombs. "It wasn't pretty," he said. "It was necessary." By the autumn of 1944, the Luftwaffe was a shadow of its former self. Fuel shortages, inexperienced pilots, and relentless Allied raids had broken its spine. But even as Germany rolled out new jet fighters like the Me-262, they came too late, too few, and too fragile. Against the Thunderbolt's armor and firepower, they were simply targets of opportunity. One report from October 1944 described a P-47 returning home with one wing nearly severed, its engine shot through, yet still flying steady. The crew chief called it the airplane that refused to die. By 1945, the Jug had become a flying legend. It served in every major theater, from the frozen skies over the Ardennes to the steaming jungles of Burma, to the islands of the Pacific where it strafed Japanese shipping. Pilots loved it not because it was elegant, but because it brought them home. One ace said, "You could shoot a P-47 full of holes and still fly it to base. Try that in a Mustang." When the war ended, the numbers told the truth. 746,000 sorties. 7,000 enemy aircraft destroyed. 86,000 vehicles. 9,000 locomotives. No other American fighter inflicted more destruction on the ground, or saved more bomber crews in the air. After victory in Europe, thousands of Thunderbolts stood lined up on quiet airfields. Engines cold, wings scarred. They'd fought from the beaches of Normandy to the heart of Germany, and many would never fly again. But their legend endured. They had turned mockery into terror, fear into victory. In 1943, German pilots laughed at the flying milk bottle. By 1945, they called it something else: the butcher bird killer. Because when a Thunderbolt came screaming out of the sun, and you heard those 8 Brownings thunder in unison, you didn't have time to laugh. You only had time to pray.